Johnny, get your gun, get your gun, get your gun. Take it on.
Hello, and welcome to Frontline Rejects. Today we're talking about my top 3 hunting bullets for the 6.5 Creedmoor. Introduced in 2008 by Hornady, the 6.5 Creed rapidly took the target shooting world by storm and is today one of the most popular centerfire rifle cartridges. While it excels at punching paper and steel at ranges out to and sometimes exceeding 1,000 yards, it has also grown to be a very popular big game round. So of course we'll be covering 3 bullet categories, 1 cup and core, 1 bonded, and 1 monolithic. But before we do, we need to clarify a couple of points, first of which is what I would comfortably hunt with this cartridge. I personally would limit my use of the 6.5 Creed to deer and similar sized game. I recognize that many very talented hunters have used this cartridge with great success on larger game such as elk, but it's not the first thing I would reach for when going on an elk hunt. So the bullets I'm picking today are going to be more geared towards deer hunting. The second point is we need to define what range I would comfortably use these projectiles out to, which of course we'll talk about with each bullet specifically, but generally I don't plan on taking shots past 400 or 500 yards, so my projectile choices are representative of that. And so to clarify, the bullets we are talking about today are what I would consider the best general purpose bullets for hunting deer-sized game out to around 400 or 500 yards. If an individual is looking to do something else like hunt larger game or hunt at longer ranges, there are better projectile options in this chambering for that application. All that said, let's get into my pick for the best cup and core bullet in the 6.5 Creedmoor, which is the 129 grain Winchester PowerPoint. 140 or 143 grain bullets tend to be much more common in 6.5 Creedmoor loadings, but I really like bullets in the 130 grain range. It's easy to see the appeal of heavier bullets when you look at the BC figures on options like the 143 ELDX or Bond Strike, which helps them carry a lot of energy at longer range while doing a great job of deflecting wind. And 120 grain options have good velocity in the low to mid 2900s. But for me, I find the sweet spot in 6.5 Creedmoor with about 130 grains in the mid 2800 foot per second velocity range. Back to the PowerPoint, I'm a huge fan of budget options that just do their job well, which from our prior testing is what the 129 grain PowerPoint is. It's an extremely affordable option that has solid performance inside of 400 yards. Now for our drop calculations today, we'll be using the velocity data posted on the back of the box of Winchester's factory-loaded Super X ammunition. Normally I'd go with load data from Nosler or another reputable source, but what makes this bullet my go-to pick is in part the factory ammunition it's offered in. Not everyone who hunts is a hand loader, and the Winchester factory ammunition using this bullet has a couple factors going for it. First off, it's affordable and available. I've seen this stuff in stock at a couple local gun stores throughout the pandemic for reasonable prices, around $30 per box. And this makes it a great option for someone who would like to practice with the same ammunition they hunt with without breaking the bank. So with our muzzle velocity of 2820 out of what we're guessing would be a 24-inch barrel, we have a maximum point-blank range 0 of 257 yards for a target diameter of 8 inches. We're going with an 8-inch diameter as that should sufficiently cover the vital zone radius of most deer, meaning that as the bullet flies through its trajectory, it'll rise to a height of 4 inches above line of sight at 150 yards, and it'll drop 4 inches below line of sight at just about 300 yards. The advantage of the max PBR 0 being that you can hold dead on anywhere inside your MPBR range and have reasonable assurance of a vital zone strike. So a hunter using this ammunition and an MPBR 0 could engage deer quickly and with ease inside of 300 yards without having to worry about compensating for drop. And they'd be doing that with a solid bullet that just performs well. It'll expand to around 2.3 times its original size and retain roughly 80% of its weight, making it a great bullet, even if you're getting into heavier weight class muleys. There are several good options for cup and core bullets that would be more than adequate for hunting deer within the 6.5 realm, and many viable picks for the runner-up, such as the Remington Core-Locked or Nosler Ballistic Tip. But in the end, what won out was the Hornady ELDX. The ELDX in this chambering is a fantastic performer. We've got a video coming out on it soon. It's got a really high BC, so very good flight characteristics, but Loaded ammunition is about 50% more expensive, and it actually retains less weight than the PowerPoint. Slot number 2 goes to my top pick for a bonded core bullet, which is the 130 grain Federal Terminal Ascent. The Terminal Ascent is, in my opinion, kind of like the unicorn of hunting bullets, meaning it's flashy and hard to find. And as a side gripe, I'd like to register my complaint that Federal doesn't offer it in enough grain weights and diameters for me to ever make it my go-to bullet. But when one of the limited offerings that it comes in happens to fit your application, and when you can find it, it's a fantastic choice. So looking at the load data sourced directly from Federal's website, using a max recommended charge of Reloader 26, we can produce 2885 feet per second with a 24-inch barrel. And we can effectively get the same velocity using Hodgdon Hybrid 100V as well. And both of those are compressed charges, but I've never been shy about stuffing cases tight, so we'll use 2885 for our drop calculations. And when we load that into JBM ballistic software, again assuming a 50-degree day at sea level, our maximum PBR 0 is 276 yards with a maximum point blank range of 325 yards. That gives us about a 24-yard gain over the Winchester PowerPoint, but out at 500 yards with the TA, we've got about 2.5 MOA less drop, which is definitely noticeable. The Terminal Ascent is a solid performer. Average expansion is usually around 2.25 times original size, but we're going to retain closer to 90% of its weight, and it will expand reliably at lower velocities. Now, I had two options in mind for the runner-up, the first being the 143 Normal Bond Strike, but that's out of the weight class I wanted to stick to, so the winner for the runner-up had to be the 129 grain Nosler Accubon Long Range. The TA actually beats the ABLR's BC with a .532 versus .53, so a rather minuscule difference, but the TA walks away with higher weight retention figures and expansion is comparable. If I was planning on shooting long range, say in excess of 500 yards, I would probably go with the ABLR, as I think it expands better at lower velocities. But again, these choices are what I'd pick if I'm staying inside of 400 or 500. Our third category is monolithic or all copper rounds, and yes, I do understand that most copper bullets use a copper or gilding metal alloy and are not pure copper, but I find it easier to group them all together with this nomenclature, as they are extremely similar in metallurgy and construction. So my pick for the top monolithic bullet in the 6.5 Creed is the 127 grain Barnes LRX. Now, the LRX is Barnes' long-range offering from their all-copper lineup, and as such, it's designed to open up at lower velocities. Recommended minimum impact velocity is around 1,600 feet per second, as opposed to 2,000 or so for the TTSX. I find that using the LRX in place of the TTSX in cartridges with modest muzzle velocities allows me to not have to worry so much about my impact speeds, even when I'm limiting myself to closer shots. The LRXs also come with slightly improved BCs, meaning less drag over the TTSXs. So in looking at Barnes' load data available on their website, they state that when running a 24-inch barrel and using a maximum recommended charge of stable 6.5, we can achieve 2883 feet per second, which is very similar to what Federal predicts we can get out of the 130 Terminal Ascent. We take that and our BC of .468 and throw it in the ballistic calculator, and we get a maximum PBR 0 of 273 yards with an MPBR of 321 yards. Pretty darn close to our 130 TA. And as we mentioned earlier, Barnes recommends at least 1,600 feet per second of impact velocity, and with this loading, we don't cross that threshold until somewhere in between 750 to 800 yards. So if we're staying inside 500, we shouldn't have to worry. The runner-up today is a newer kid on the block. Hornady brought the CX to market last year, and we've tested several of the options in the lineup so far on this channel. What impressed us about the CX is its ability to expand very well at lower velocities. So the 130 grain Hornady CX fills the runners-up slot well, as it was a serious contender for first place. So to recap, in no particular order, my top 3 general purpose bullets for the 6.5 Creedmoor are the 129 grain Winchester PowerPoint, the 130 grain Federal Terminal Ascent, and the 127 grain Barnes LRX. If you got something out of today's content, consider hitting the like button and drop a comment below with your favorite bullet for 6.5 Creedmoor. If you'd like to stay up to date with what we're doing here on the channel, hit the subscribe button. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.